Dehancer is one of the most popular film emulation plugins for DaVinci Resolve, but does it deliver good results and is it worth the investment? This is what we're going to be discussing today. Dehancer Pro for DaVinci Resolve. Before we dive in, I'd like to make a disclaimer that this is not a sponsored video, but Dehancer did reach out to me to review their plugin, and in exchange they kindly offered to give away one lifetime license for Dehancer Pro to one of you. I'll share more details about how you can enter at the end of this video, so make sure you stick around. To see how well the plugin performs, I'm going to try to recreate the look of the music video #1 candidate shot on 60mm film and see how close we can get using these clips captured in a similar location and time of day. So without further ado, let's dive in. 16mm film reference. Personally, I think it's beneficial to work with references, especially when you're starting out, so that you can learn to reverse engineer looks, understand your scopes, and pinpoint the specific characteristics that make a look beautiful. I've come across stills from this music video on ShotDeck a number of times, and I've always thought this is the signature 16mm Kodak look. And of course, these look amazing because of the beautiful grade by Company 3, but certainly a lot of the characteristics we see are due to the fact this was shot on film. With this in mind, let's see whether we can emulate the characteristics of this look using digital footage and Dehancer's O effects. 16mm film emulation with Dehancer. To give you a quick overview of my pipeline, I have my node-based color management set up with an IDT in my group pre-clip. On my clip level, I have a very basic node structure reserved for primary and secondary adjustments. And in the group post-clip is where we will apply Dehancer right before our ODT that goes out to Rec 709 Gamma 2.4, as this is what my reference display is calibrated to. Today we're working with 3 clips shot on Red Monstro because we want to see how our look is going to carry across multiple clips, and I also want to show you what my order of operations is when working on look development for a scene. I'll use the first shot as my hero because it's a wide angle and it gives me a good view of my key anchors: the sky, the foliage, and of course some skin tones. With this out of the way, let's apply Dehancer. Personally, I don't like the fact that when I apply Dehancer, it comes in presetted. I really think this should be a clean slate. But there is a button at the very bottom to disable all tools, so that's what I'm going to do. I'll set the source to DaVinci Wide Gamut, DaVinci Intermediate, as this is my timeline color space. Holding down Alt on my keyboard, I'll collapse all the sections of the plugin, and let's start enabling the ones we need. Under Film, we can explore the various film profiles Dehancer offers, and I think this is where this plugin shines, as they have over 60 film profiles currently. So as a part of your look development process, you can toggle between the different options and see whether any prints look right for your project. In our case, I'm going to go with Kodak Vision 3 500T. Initially, I was surprised to see how flat profiles appear in Dehancer, but after reading their manual, I understood that this is intentional to allow enough headroom for creative adjustments, and they advise using the expand section straight away after applying the profile to sort of fit the luminance range you want. But before doing that, I'll also apply Kodak's 2383 print option, as I think that's going to get us closer to the look we're after. I'll utilize the target white control to warm up the temperature, as the initial result feels too cold. And I'll also increase the tonal contrast and color density. Here is a quick before and after with and without the print. Next, I'll go back to film because I want to adjust push and pull under profile. It would be difficult to explain how push and pull works, so I'll create a future video demonstrating this technique, but for now you can think of this slider as a way to try out different flavors of the film print. I think this gives us beautiful coolness in the shadows, but the look has now gone too cold, so I'm going to counter this by warming up the temperature and adjusting tint. Moving on to the next section, under Film Developer, I think we can take advantage of Color Boost as our image feels too muted. Let's open up our reference in split screen mode, and I think we're going down the right track. I can see that the sky is currently matching on the waveform, but I feel we're lacking some detail in the clouds and a roll-off in the highlights. Since film compression is entirely dedicated to tackling highlights, I'll utilize it by adjusting the white point. Next, as we briefly mentioned, expand allows you to set where your black and white points sit. For our image, I think we can decrease the black point ever so slightly. Color head is an interesting section because it allows you to adjust the overall balance of the look on the yellow versus blue, magenta versus green, and cyan versus red axes. For our image, I think we can use a bit of push towards blue so we have more color separation. The next three sliders are quite self-explanatory, but personally I find these are not precise enough because you can't specify the exact tonal ranges affected, so I would prefer to stick to Resolve's native tools. And I can see that we're not quite achieving the cool shadow we see present in the reference, so I'll add some subtle split toning using custom curves. And if this looks unfamiliar or confusing to you, we've already discussed split toning on this channel and I'll link to the video above. And here is the before and after of this step. It's subtle, but I think it helps. If we disable and enable Dehancer, we can see how much it's affecting the look of our image. But we're not done yet. I think now would be a good time to switch to the clip level and start adjusting the exposure and balance of our image. You'll notice that I'm leaving the contrast of the film print emulation by Dehancer fairly flat, and that's because I want to have room to be able to adjust the contrast on a shot-by-shot basis. I've recently adopted the linear gamma white balance technique and I've really enjoyed the results that it produces. If you haven't heard of it, just follow the link above. Next, I'll adjust lift, gamma and gain, aiming to get more color separation in the image. So I think we're somewhere in the ballpark in terms of the contrast and the palette now, so I'll stop pixel peeping and let's move on to texture. I'll start off with film grain, and knowing that the reference is captured on 16mm film, I'm going to select 16mm ISO 50 as a starting point, and then I'll switch to custom. That's going to give me more control over the individual parameters. So let me tweak these and see if I can get close to our reference. Personally, what I don't enjoy about Dehancer's grain is that it affects the brightness and contrast of our look slightly. Also, I wish it had the option to change the blending mode similarly to Resolve's film grain or effects. But having said that, I think this result looks good. Next, let's apply halation, and again I'll select 16mm Super 16 as a starting point and then I'll switch to custom so that I have more control over each parameter. And I think this looks okay. Personally, I think the only control Dehancer's halation is lacking is having control over the saturation. Now let's move on to bloom, even though I don't really see a pronounced bloom in the reference, but I'll apply a small dose of the 16mm profile as I think it enhances the look. Next, let's add some film damage as a preferential touch. I'll go with a custom profile as I want to disable the scratches and the hair and only keep dust turned on. And lastly, under overscan, let's add a film frame. Super 16 doesn't seem to be the one, but Ultra 16 looks very similar to the reference. I'll adjust the scale to make it bigger, and I'll decrease lens zoom as the footage I'm working with is anamorphic. I'll also add some blur to the frame by increasing gate defocus. And I think this looks good. When I look at the reference, one of the key characteristics that stands out for me is the color of the grass, and in our image, the foliage needs more work. So I'll create a new serial node at the start of my look development stack and I'll use Color Slice. When I highlight yellow's preset, I can see that it's already picking up most of the areas that I'm interested in, but I'll adjust the center slightly. Next, I'll tweak the hue towards a cooler green color. I'll add a bit of saturation, and I'll decrease density because, as you can see on the waveform, the foliage is quite lifted in the reference. And when I enable and disable this correction, you can see the difference that it makes. As a final step, I want to address the texture of our look because I feel that the reference looks sharper. So I'll create a new serial node before Dehancer and I'll apply Texture Pop in advanced mode. I'll increase the detail in high frequencies and I'll toggle highlight in AB mode to see the pixels affected. This may not be visible on YouTube, but hopefully you'll take my word that this makes a huge difference on a large reference display. The next step in my workflow would be to jump back to the clip level and work on matching the remaining clips. And let's see all 3 shots in full screen, and I'll let you be the judge of whether this feels like a realistic 16mm film emulation to you. So overall, if I had to share my thoughts on Dehancer, I'd say that I like its texture tools the most. However, when it comes to the film print emulation, I find that it's often not straightforward to get a good looking result. I think that's partially due to the fact that film profiles come in so flat, which I understand is intentional by design, but I just find that it takes a lot of tweaking and finessing to create a desired look. But having said that, I've had Dehancer for 2 years now, and I've used it on a number of my client and personal projects, and I've achieved some great looks with it. If you feel this plugin can be useful in your workflow, you can enter my competition to win a perpetual license for Dehancer Pro for the software of your choice. All you need to do is leave a like, make sure you subscribe to my channel, and leave a comment below saying, "I want Dehancer." I'm going to draw one winner on the 20th of December and share it as a YouTube short. And I think that's going to come as a lovely present for someone just in time for Christmas. So a huge thank you to Dehancer for allowing me to give something back to my growing community here on YouTube. Good luck to everyone, and I'll see you in the next one.